My neighbor in my apartment complex orders a lot of food, but I've never seen them. The neighbors in the crumbling apartment building rarely saw Mr. Grayson. He lived in 2B, a dim and stifling unit stuffed to the ceiling with junk. Rumor had it that he was a hoarder, but what they all knew for certain was his insatiable appetite. Delivery drivers came and went at all hours, carrying bags of greasy food, stacks of pizzas, and desserts by the pound. At first, the sounds of his chewing and slurping late at night were just an annoyance, but over time the noise grew louder, more grotesque. It wasn't just the sound of eating, it was like something else was feasting with him. Some of the neighbors even swore they heard faint whispers in the dead of night, low and guttural, coming from his apartment. One day the delivery driver stopped coming. The neighbors noticed that the usual stench of fried food had been replaced by something far worse, rotting meat, rancid and heavy in the air. Complaints were made, but Grayson never answered the door. Finally, the landlord forced his way in. The sight that greeted him was worse than anything he could have imagined. The apartment was a tomb. Every surface was piled high with rotting food, half-eaten burgers, pizza crusts covered in mold, and boxes of untouched takeout spilling onto the floor. The air was thick with flies, their droning hum suffocating. And in the middle of it all was Mr. Grayson, slumped in a broken chair at a small table. His body was grotesquely bloated, his skin stretched and discolored, with deep black veins running up his neck. His mouth hung open, stuffed with what looked like chunks of raw meat. His eyes were wide, staring in terror at the table in front of him. The landlord gagged and stumbled back, but not before noticing what was on the table. It wasn't food, it was a polished black plate, its surface rippling like liquid in the dim light. Carved into its edge were strange ancient symbols. The landlord swore he saw faint handprints smeared in blood around it, as if someone or something had pulled itself out. The coroner's report was no help. They said Grayson had died of acute organ failure, his stomach having ruptured from overeating. But that didn't explain the strange claw-like marks on his arms, or the way his jaw seemed unnaturally stretched. The landlord threw everything out, including the strange plate. He moved a new tenant into 2B within a month, but the whispers returned, soft and coaxing, late at night. The new tenant started ordering more and more food, as if possessed by an uncontrollable hunger. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the apartment, something chuckled quietly, waiting for its next feast.